30s and 40s, and a lot of fine ball players never got the opportunity to play in the show because of the discrimination and prejudice that was so prevalent back then. But from an employment labor law issue, you're rewarding men who had no contractual relationship with an employer. Now think about that for a moment. It's mind-boggling. It would be the equivalent of well, I don't know where you work, but let's say you work for Company A, and I don't know what the vesting requirement is of Company A, but you don't meet it. You come pretty close. You're a bit PO'd, but all things being equal, you would say, okay, look, pension wasn't mine to have to begin with. And then along comes Doug Gladstone or somebody else, and Company A gives Doug Gladstone, who's never worked for Company A at all, your pension. How would you feel?
No, definitely. And most companies, it's only a couple of years that you would need to. Now, you wouldn't get much of a pension for working for a company 2-3 years, but you would get something, I think, normally for a couple of years of service in the real world, anyway.
Absolutely. Even if Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association decided, because Rob Manfred, the very talented executive vice president of labor relations for the league, Rob Manfred said, look, we'll put this on the table during our collective bargaining negotiations that are scheduled to commence in February 2011, next spring training, because the collective bargaining agreement, as you may know, runs out in December 2011. We'll put it on the table. We'll talk about it, but we want buy-in from the players' union. And I'll be very candid with you. I don't know why today's current players wouldn't go along with this. I'm an advocate of the Three Musketeers philosophy, all for one and one for all, particularly for ball players who pave the path so that an A-Rod can make $27 million a year, so that a Jason Day can command $65 million for 4 years, or Matt Holliday can command $107 million for 7 years. Your listeners and you might be aware of the fact that Michael, the head of the union, Michael Weiner. Exactly. He recently charged collusion. He said that the league owners, the 30 teams, conspired to compress the free agent market against the players who filed as free agents. Well, I don't know about you, but I think that's comical. Like I said, Jason Bay just got a 4-year, $65 million contract. Matt Holliday got 7 years and $105 million. How is that? I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. That is not a mere bag of shells.
No, not at all. I mean, I think their point is they feel some of the veteran players, the 33, 34, 35-year-olds that used to get 3-4 year contracts, like a Johnny Damon, like a Bobby Abreu, can't get that anymore. But like you were saying, we're not in a good economy, and 1 year, $8 million is a heck of a lot more than anything that you mentioned Steve Gurley made in his entire career.
Exactly. It's certainly more than what probably I'm going to make for my career.
I'll take it for 1 year. I'll throw some knuckleballs up there for 1 year, $5 million.
Oh, absolutely. Be 60 feet 6 inches away from A-Rod, and I don't care about my ERA if I'm commanding $27 million a year.
Yeah, here's interesting, because you mentioned why the Players Association. I'm thinking back to an interview I heard a couple of years ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, when Brian Boehringer, who I believe was, when he was in San Diego, was a player rep, and he had some issues with an agent, and he went to the union and really got nowhere with the union. Now, there's a guy, Brian Boehringer, who had a couple of nice years, by no means was a scrub, was a representative, went nowhere, and his assertion was, hey, listen, the union exists for the top 5 percentile, the Rodriguez, as you mentioned, the Holidays, the power agents like Boris. Those are the guys that are going to keep the union treasure chest strong. They're going to bring the average salaries up. Those are the guys that they obviously have the relationships with. And I'm guessing that in hearing that story, you're not surprised. And essentially, those are the guys they're going to have to spearhead something like this, because the other bottom 95% that are making $400,000 here today, gone tomorrow, they don't have the influence with a Michael Weiner or, in the past, a Donald Fehr.
No, I am not surprised by it. It's the first time I've heard that story. The average Major League salary is $3.27 million a year. I'd take that in a heartbeat. I will tell you this, that there is a feeling among the Major League Baseball Players Alumni Association, specifically the four gentlemen who are trying to correct this wrong. Gary Neibauer, the former hurler for the Atlanta Braves and Philadelphia Phillies, Eddie Robinson, the old GM for the Texas Rangers and the Phillies, Craig Skoke, the former hurler for the Boston Red Sox and the Atlanta Braves, and last but not least, Mr. Clyde. There is a feeling that either one of two scenarios is occurring. Either Don Fehr and, to a lesser extent, Marvin Miller. By the way, my book literally came out on Marvin Miller's 93rd birthday on April 13th. Either they never told the player reps about this situation, or, you know, today's players are just greedy and they don't want their share of the pie to be diminished. Now, in either case, Mike, the situation is reprehensible. Either scenario is something I just can't stomach. That, that today's players who, again, I hate to reiterate this, but the path was paved for these outrageous salaries by the Steve Grillies, by the Ken Wrights, by the David Clydes and the Gary Neibauers and the Don DeMolas who lives out in Hauppauge. I think your show tapes in Freeport. I know Hauppauge's not that too far away from the station. Don DeMola was a pitcher for 2 years, had a cup of coffee with the Montreal Expos. These are guys who they're not getting any younger, and all they want is to have their share of the pie receive some type of recognition.
Right. Have you been able to get to Donald Fehr, Marvin Miller, any of these guys, and maybe get a comment about what you're writing about?
Absolutely. In the book,
what are they saying?
Okay. In the book, first of all, let me just say that I have no personal animus with anyone from the Players Association. I really don't. I try to be a responsible journalist. I try to present a balanced, fair portrait, and it would have been nice if people had given me more than the token, cursory, generic, formulaic press statement. Don Fehr I called up because his phone number is listed, and it was the third game of the World Series last year, and he was in transit, but he called me back, to his credit, and he told me, really, in a very, again, he's not here to defend himself, but since you asked the question, he told me in a very condescending, patronizing attitude the following: look, the current plight of these 874, that's not the union's fault. And the owners back in 1980 and the negotiator for the owners at that point in time was Ray Greeby, who I think is 83 and still with us in Connecticut. They made us a proposal going forward, and for the sake of our members, we accepted the proposal of instant pension eligibility going forward. They didn't make us a proposal going backwards. Click, end of discussion. Now,
basically hung up on you at that point.
Pretty much. It certainly was very curt. Let's put it that way. And then I followed up. I had the privilege and the honor to speak with Marvin Miller. And Marvin Miller had just lost his wife of 67 years 2 weeks before. I called him on Veterans Day. And he was very gracious, very polite, could not have been more solicitous. And this is really a highlight of the book. He said to me, did I ever consider retroactively amending the vesting requirement?